all an elaborate illusion.
Well, fantastic. I know a lot of moms had some sports things that were happening this evening, so they're planning on catching it on our replay on our YouTube channel, but it's 7:00 and I know your time is precious. So I'm going to just start this off.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Tonight, I have the honor of chatting with New York Times bestselling author Kirsten Miller about her first adult novel, The Change, which was a gloriously entertaining and knife-sharp feminist revenge fantasy about three women whose midlife crisis brings unexpected new powers, putting them on a collision course with the evil that lurks in their wealthy beach town. The Change was a Book of the Month selection over the summer and also a Good Morning America book club pick. For those who are not familiar with Kirsten, she is a groundbreaking feminist author in YA literature, best known for her popular series, Kiki's Strike. In addition to writing novels, Kirsten spent 25 years as a strategist in the advertising industry. And during that time, she worked for some of the largest agencies in the world, as well as boutique agencies and an 8-person startup. She's proud to have quit at least 2 of those jobs over ads and incidents described in The Change. So thank you so much for your time, Kirsten, and welcome to the Peloton Moms Book Club.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
We've had so many moms who just raved about this book over the summer. And so they shared their love with it in the group and they've shared their love with it outside of the group. So we're all excited to have you here tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
So tell us just in your own words, for those who might not have already read The Change, what is the book about?
So the book is about 3 women who reach, and I'm going to use a phrase that I absolutely hate. They reach a certain age. That certain age is, I don't know why we have to be so, sneaky about it. A certain age is my age. I'm 49. And they have been told these stories their entire lives about what this sort of time in your life is supposed to be like. And they realize that it's something quite different. And they start to develop special powers that are sort of connected to being, in their late 40s, early 50s. And one of them, Nessa, her life has gotten really quiet. Her husband has passed away. Her girls are at school, and she realizes in the silence that she can hear the dead. And then there's Jo, who has felt like she's been at war with her body her entire life. And she starts getting hot flashes a bit earlier than she anticipated. And she thinks that is the straw that broke the camel's back. Until she realizes that she can take all of that rage and all of that energy and channel it into some pretty interesting things. And then finally, there's Harriet, who has let's just say a sort of a knack for nature. She can convince it to do what she wants it to do. And the 3 of them join forces, and they discover the body of a young girl that's been dumped on the side of the road. And they refuse to accept the official story for her death, and they go off in search of the killer. And that's and it's a bit crazy, but it's a lot of fun.
Definitely a lot of fun. I loved it. 5 stars from me personally.
Oh, thank you.
So, you're going along with your writing career, you're writing these YA novels. So what was the inspiration behind choosing to write The Change, and when did you start to write it versus, it being published?
I think I started, it's hard to say because, COVID came in and basically, messed with my brain and probably everybody else's brains as well. I'm pretty sure I started it towards the end of 2018. And it was really just, it was kind of, I had written a lot of books, a lot of YA books, and I had spent many years partnering with the actor Jason Segel. And we wrote 7 books together. And we were done with the 2 series that we were going to write. And I needed to, I was a little bit burnt out, even though that was a wonderful experience, but I was a little bit burnt out on YA. And I thought, I really need to do something that I feel very passionate about. I don't know if it's going to make me any money. I don't know if it's going to be something anybody likes, but I need to write a book for me. I need to write a book that I want to read for, the book that I wish I would find on a dusty shelf somewhere that would make a difference to me. So I sat down and wrote it, and I didn't, like I said, I hadn't written an adult book, and that is a very different world in publishing. So it was really a Hail Mary pass. And I'm proud of myself for doing it. It took a lot of courage to step outside of that comfort zone and do what I thought like I needed to do. And also I was really mad because nobody would give me a job. Because I was working, I'd always worked part-time in advertising, and you know, at a certain age, you start being told that you're too senior for certain positions. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm interviewing for senior roles. And then finally it occurred to me that what they were saying was, oh, you're too old. So I thought I need to do something else. So I did.
Yeah, well, you took that rage and that anger and you channeled it into an amazing book. So you had mentioned that there were, you know, it's vastly different from going from publishing YA to this adult novel. Tell us a little bit about like what's so different.
Well, I mean, it's just a completely different set of people. You know, it's you do not, I spent so many years and wrote so many books in the YA world. I knew lots of other authors. I knew lots of other, editors. I knew tons of, I worked with, God, I think 4 different publishers. And I felt like I knew that world really well. And then you step into the adult world and it's a completely different set of characters. And it's fun. I mean, it's great. I've really enjoyed the experience, but it is very much like entering a whole new territory. And I'm making friends.
Well, that's good. Well, you had so many amazing authors blurb this book. So, you know, for it being your first adult novel and getting some big heavy hitters whose opinions we value, you know, within the book club and then just, you know, across the United States in general, you know, how did you go about getting the, like Emily Henry just adored your book. I mean, that's a big get. So.
I didn't even get her. That was the whole thing, is like, usually you reach out to people and you beg them. That's how you get it. It's sort of because it's a 500-page book and you're talking to other authors and you're saying, take a week out of your time and read my book, please. And, you know, it's a huge thing to ask somebody. And I was really lucky that there were, sorry, this is my cat. You see me petting something down here. It's a cat. And he likes to come and get friendly when I'm on Zooms. But yeah, so I didn't even, Emily read the book and did that of her own volition. And it was really, and I say this without any hyperbole at all, the greatest gift that you can give another author. So I'm absolutely eternally grateful to her for doing that for me, and for all of the authors who took the time out to read a really long book.
Well, you know, speaking, it is a really long book, and you know, I read really long books. It doesn't intimidate me, but it sometimes can be off-putting. People look at the size and like, well, I don't have a week to contribute to a book, or however long it takes them to read it. You know, was there a lot cut out, or did you add to the book? Like, how did we get to this almost 500-page book, which honestly it was a really quick read for the length of book that it is. So that's saying something.
Yeah, it's meant to be fun. It's, you know, I wanted a book that people would read, you know, so I wanted it to be fun. I'm at the stage of my life where I, you know, when I pick up a book, I want to be entertained. You know, I went to college. I read all of the stuff I was supposed to read and struggled there. I want to have fun. So that was the whole point of the book. But so the first draft was really just the basic story, right? So the 3 women meet each other. They find Faith. They look for her killers. They find the killers, blah, blah, blah. It was very straight, one through line. And I gave it to my agent, who I've been with for 15, 16 years. And she's a firecracker. She's like one of those people in your life who will tell you exactly what she thinks, which I really appreciate, because, you know, like, I don't need anybody pumping sunshine for me. So she said, I really love the story, but I want to know more about these women that you've written about. And in the initial draft, there had been a lot of Nessa's backstory, because I had always thought of her as kind of the moral compass of the book. She was the one who was kind of guiding everybody through this tale. And she was like, I want to know more about these other women. And so I went back and I started writing about Harriet, and I started writing about Jo. And as I did that, I thought, I want to know more about all of the women who show up in this book. Like, even if they're in there just for a brief period of time, like, how did they get there? What in their lives led them to be a part of this story? So I wrote a little chapter for each and every one of them. I think I got everybody. And that's how it ended up being so long. But I knew when I was writing it that it would be fun to read, because I really loved writing those chapters so much. And yeah, and when we sold the book and it went to the editor, my editor, and we ended up cutting very little. I was surprised, because a lot of times they will look at a book and be like, this is, let's see if we can cut this down another 100 pages. But she wasn't interested. She really liked all of that stuff that I put in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got to be so long.
Well, was the change always the title?
Oh yeah, yeah, because so not only did it work it works on any number of levels. You can see it as the change is sort of a euphemism for menopause, or you can see it as the changes in these women realizing that their lives are different and they can do things that they hadn't done before. You can look at it as in the change that society needs to undergo. But one of the fun things when you're writing a book and you're looking for a title, one of the first things you do is plug it into Google to see who else has written a book with that genius name that you thought you were the only person who ever came up with it. And there are always like 100 books with that title. And I plugged the change in, and there was no fiction at all. I mean, there might have been like some really random thing, but there was nothing. And it was because it's a euphemism for menopause. Nobody wanted to give their book that name. And I thought, that's hilarious. I'm just going to take it and I'm going to own it.
Well, that is funny that it hasn't been used. I mean, it is a euphemism for menopause, but it doesn't have to be, like you just explained. There's many different levels to the change. I'm surprised that it hadn't been taken, but it worked out.
Yeah. So that's how it came to be.
Let's talk a little bit about Nessa, the seer, and Jo, the protector, and Harriet, the punisher of sorts. How did you develop these three ladies with such distinct voices and come to choose their particular points of view?
So it's hard to pinpoint exactly when they came into being, because I'd been thinking about it. Looking back, I can see where I was thinking about these characters 13 years ago. In fact, that's how Jo originated. It was before my daughter, it would have been 14 years ago. So it was before my daughter was born. And I used to go to this gym, and I would every day around lunchtime, this woman would come in, and this was in Greenwich Village, and she was like some sort of fashion person. You could tell she was very fancy, and she had beautiful red hair and like always perfectly dressed. And she would come in and she would get on this elliptical, the same one every day, and I thought she was going to kill it. Like, she was just like, she was pounding this machine, and I started watching her, and I could see that she was cursing like under her breath, and like sort of occasionally she'd like punch the air. And I thought, wow, she's really mad about something. Like, she's here to blow off steam before she explodes. And I started paying attention to like a lot of the other women in the gym, and they were there doing the same exact thing. And I thought, this is interesting. So all these women are coming here, and they're getting something out of their system. So that was 14 years ago. And I knew I wanted to have a character who was, who had this kind of rage and who had this kind of power and who put it to use, and so that was how she came about. And then Nessa was always, she's just, I gave her a lot of, because I'm from, her backstory is set in South Carolina. I'm from North Carolina, and we have like in the South, we always have like, a lot of us have little weird stories that we tell about our families. Like there's always something special about us. And in my family, there was always this like, people would say that the women in our family could see ghosts. So I thought that was really cool. And, what if the ghosts actually told you something and led you somewhere? And so that's how she kind of ended up coming into being. And Harriet's just who I want to be when I grow up. She was just, she's a little bit of a lot of different people, but I knew she's named after a woman that I knew, who had this big giant smile, and she was this gorgeous older woman, and with this crazy smile that made you think that she might eat you. And I thought I thought she was the most interesting person I'd ever met. So there's a little bit of her and Harriet too, but they came from all sorts of different places. And yeah, it's just I wanted them to be very different because I wanted to show the kind of power that we can wield if women from different backgrounds and different, walks of life came together to fight for the same things. So I wanted them to feel different.
Yeah, what a sight would that be if women all came together and claimed their power and really had a plan and executed said plan. So, when it comes to their powers in particular, how did you decide on those specifically? Because, someone had talked about, invisibility would be awesome, because you got the witchy vibe going on. You could have gone way out there and done some crazy things, but you kept it fairly reasonable, not beyond the realm of possibility. So let's just chat a little bit about their powers and the decision behind that.
Yeah, I wanted them to have powers that felt like they could naturally come at this stage in life. They're a lot of them are come from experience. They come from wisdom. And I do think that you have powers when you reach your late 40s, early 50s that you didn't have before. You're able to do things that you couldn't before. I mean, I certainly can. I feel like this is the first time in my life when I actually know what I'm doing. And so I wanted to really feel true to that. I didn't want them to have Avenger style superpowers. I wanted them to have things that, sort of gifts that we could all imagine ourselves having. I mean, I think all of us imagine at some point, like when you get mad enough that you might actually be able to melt a metal pen in your hand. It's not that far from our own experiences. And I think that's the kind of magic that has always worked best for me in literature, is the kind of magic where you feel like it's just one step over your own experiences. It's still got one foot really firmly planted in reality. And it makes the world feel like a more magical place.
I love that. I've read a fair amount of magical realism this year, and I'm not sure if it's a direct result of there just being more stories like that on the market these days, or if I'm just drawn to those stories in particular. And certainly the change fits within that magical realism niche, heavy on the realism. How did you go about deciding which parts of the book you felt like should have that more magical element versus the parts without it, the parts that needed to be more grounded?
Well, so in all of their experiences, so I was very careful when it came to talking about the things that they have experienced in their lives to stay very close to what I knew to be true. So things that I had personally experienced, things that my sister had personally experienced, things that my friends had personally experienced, because I did not want to be accused of making up a bunch of crap to make people look bad. I wanted to actually use real stories. So all of that and all of the bad guys are based on real people, all of them. So I wanted to stick very close to that, so that it felt real. And so that all of that stuff, Harriet's advertising career, a lot of that stuff happened. The situation in the bank where Joe goes in for a loan, I know a lot of people who've been in that situation. It's just, the sexual harassment, casual sexual harassment. I mean, I couldn't even count the number of people I know who have been in that situation. So, I wanted that to be, I did not want there to be any magic or any fantasy or anything at all in those sections of the book, because I wanted to go after real bad guys, not just ones that I dreamed up.
Well, Lord knows there's enough bad men out there. You didn't really have to go very far to find source material to represent those. Caroline asked, was there inspiration for Epstein? I'm pretty sure there was, but I'll let you go ahead and address that.
No, definitely. I mean, this was, and for more reasons than one. So I followed that case very, very closely. And it was one of the things that made me very mad. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book, because and people say, like, I've heard people say, oh, she hates men. No, I don't. I actually really like men. I don't like men who abuse young women. Those are the guys I don't like. All the rest, I'm fine with everybody. Men are great. But Jeffrey Epstein really, really, really pissed me off, because here was a rich man who went out, and he and Ghislaine Maxwell looked for girls that they could take advantage of. They looked for girls whose mothers were out of the picture, or who, had, lots of other stuff going on in their lives, or had, substance abuse problems. They looked for girls who didn't have anyone looking after them. And they abused them horribly. And they would have gotten away with it, and would continue to be getting away with it to this very day if it wasn't for one woman. And it was a woman named Julie K. Brown. She writes for the Miami Herald. And after Epstein got out of jail and he was back to having celebrities over to his mansion for dinner parties, she was the one person who refused to let it go. She was not going to let that keep happening. And she, over years, investigated every aspect of the case and wrote I think a 4 or 5 part series in the Miami Herald that eventually blew the whole case open and ended up bringing him to justice. And it was one woman who did that. So it was not just like, oh, look, there are bad guys in the world. The inspiration also came from the fact that there was one woman who was really angry and really smart and just decided it was not going to go on anymore. And she stopped it. And there are a number of other examples where, like, it's just been one woman who's decided she's not taking it anymore, and she's brought down, a revenge porn empire, or, a sexual predator here. So it can be done. And I took a lot of inspiration from that case, both on the positive side and on the negative side.
Mm-hmm. I definitely got the vibe from that, and it's been discussed in our group previously. And I think that, it once again added just another layer to the story, because most of us, lived through that and we're paying attention to the news cycle. And I love hearing that the whole one woman not going to take it anymore and does something about it and brings about change, because, there's a lot of instances where one woman isn't going to take it anymore, but then it falls on deaf ears and it doesn't bring about the change that one would hope. You had mentioned about the loan incident in your personal life or through a friend of yours. There's another book out right now. It's a nonfiction book. It's called When Women Lead. And she did all of this research about, like, if a man goes to pitch, what happens? And then if a woman goes to pitch, what happens? So I'm really excited to check out that book soon. You have a cat, I have a daughter running around.
It's adorable.
Thank you. I am going to get to the questions in the chat. So ladies, keep them coming. I'm going to circle back to them. At Eliza Bookworm over on Instagram wanted to know, which of the women did you most relate to? Which was your favorite to write? I'm curious to see if your answer is one and the same to both of those questions.
Well, Harriet was by far the most fun to write. I mean, she's a great character because her real superpower, she does this stuff with nature and everything, but her real superpower is just not giving a damn. So, she has let go of all of it. She's not living by anybody's rules but her own at this point. and she's, you know, she's taken off the blinders, and she sees things, she sees the world through her own eyes for the first time. So she was a lot of fun to write. I am probably, I would say I'm a lot Joe and a lot Nessa. You know, I think if you put those two characters together, you might find me somewhere in the middle. But yeah, it's I guess at this point, probably more Joe. I was also inspired because I took up running, and you know, I was never a very athletic person in my life. In fact, probably the opposite. And, you know, all of a sudden, like I realized I could do something that I never thought I could do before. And I realized it, you know, at 48. And it was just this incredible experience for me, kind of coming into that power. Yeah, somebody started running when they turned 40. It's like, it's a really amazing experience to realize that, you know, you're able to do something that you never thought you would be able to do. So that's why I made her a runner, because I just feel like there's so much freedom and power in it.
Yeah, I wish I could be a runner. I live on the Gulf Coast of Texas, and it is just so hot and so humid, 360 days a year. I can't do it. I see people out there running and I'm like, good on you, but that's not me.
No, I can't. Like I couldn't even, it was hard this summer to run in New York. I had to get up at the crack of dawn to go running. One of my neighbors was like, I saw you running at 6:30 the other day. He was like, you think that's a good idea? I was like, I guess.
Sure, why not?
You're gonna run really fast.
With the mystery elements, the numerous characters, their respective journeys, and a page count of almost 500, I can imagine it was a lot to keep track of during the writing process.
Mhm.
When you sat down to write the change, did you have a clear vision of all the things that you wanted to accomplish? I mean, did you plot it all out, or did you just let things flow freely onto the page and kind of fly by your pants?
No, I can't. I've tried pantsing it before. I mean, my first book, I thought, you know, you start writing it and you're like, oh I've got this, I can do this. Like, I'm a genius. Like and then you realize that you're not, and you get lost like around page 200. And when you get lost in your own book, it's a really, really terrifying experience. So from that point forward, I always wrote really, really elaborate outlines. So I always know the basic plot, and I always kind of know how to get from A to B to C to D, but I do leave a lot of room to come up with crazy ideas along the way. And I will end up going off on tangents and taking detours and all sorts of stuff, but I always try to follow that one basic thread so that I don't get lost. Because God, when you have to like go back and fix 100 pages that it's terrifying.
I can imagine. I know you had started off saying Harriet was one of your favorite characters. I was so consumed with her house. I just want to go and visit Harriet and see her house and see all the plants and don't touch the things I'm not supposed to touch. Did you have a clear vision of that in mind? Are you a gardener? Because I have a black thumb. I couldn't keep a cactus alive, you know?
Well, I grew up, my grandmother, growing up, when I was growing up, she had a sort of a sunroom that was filled with plants. And I don't even know where she got all of them. It was just like this random assortment of plants. And she was a brilliant gardener. She always knew exactly what to do. And this was before the internet. She was just kind of, I think she was talking to them. So she was really talented. My brother's a very talented gardener as well. I, until recently, have not been able to keep anything alive, but I have managed to keep some plants going for a while now, and I'm very proud of myself. But yeah, that's what I would love. There's a house not that far from me, a brownstone in Brooklyn, where I don't know what kind of genius this guy is. Like, I see him outside working on it, but the entire front of the house is just covered in plants. Like the whole front of the house. And it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. It looks like it was painted. And I would love to have a situation like that, but yeah, I'm nowhere near that where, where the talent's concerned.
Okay, 1 second.
It happens to all of us.
My son lost a tooth tonight at soccer practice. Oh,
Oh,
wow.
congratulations.
Good job, buddy. So I love to read books and listen to audiobooks. I mean, a lot of the moms in our book club appreciate audiobooks because, we can get stuff done while listening to the book. And I love January Lavoie, and you got her to narrate The Change. And I mean, for people who are familiar with audiobooks, they know that she's a prominent narrator.
Yeah.
Did you have any assistance getting her pulled into the project, or how did she come to be affiliated?
I did not have anything to do with that. That was my publisher put together a sort of a wish list of people to read the book, and she was right at the top. So when she agreed to do it, everybody was very excited. And I mean, she obviously did an amazing job. So it was a huge coup for all of us. But yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts. So, and that's, there's, what else are you going to do when you're cleaning the house? Listen to a podcast or walking down the street.
Exactly. I mean, you guys got a lot of my money because A, I bought the book, and then B, I bought the audio book also. So I mean, kudos on that. I saw the other, you touched on this briefly earlier, and I saw the other day on your Instagram that a few people had called you out as possibly being a man hater in light of this book. And first off, A, I didn't get the vibe that the author was a man hater, and B, there are still some good men in this book. It's not a complete trash on the opposite sex. What is your response to this book, and perhaps by extension yourself being called a man hater?
I think it's just silly, honestly. I mean, I do hate men who abuse women, but I do not think that is anywhere near the majority of men at all. It's a tiny minority of men, and they need to be dealt with. But yeah, no, I had a really, really wonderful father, probably the best of all fathers. And he and I have a wonderful brother as well. They're actually quite similar personality wise. But one of the things that I always loved and respected about both of them is that, here are these two giant dudes, super kind of what they like, with all those traditionally masculine traits. And when they went to find a spouse, they chose women who were just as strong as they were. They were so confident in themselves that they wanted an equal. They did not want somebody who was going to be subservient, or somebody who was going to be, was there to fluff their ego. They wanted somebody that would be a companion and, an equal and better them in some ways. And to me, that's kind of the ultimate, that would be that's the ultimate in masculinity to me, is when you find somebody who has all of that strength and all of that power of their own, and they want to find that in the person that they spend their life with. So I those are the men that I really admire. And I think Franklin's a really good example of that. And there were a few other guys in the book that I thought were too, but this is a book about the women. So that's why I spent most of the time talking about them. Like I didn't, one of the things that I didn't want to do was, was make this a book about the bad guys. I wanted to make this a book about the women who come together and fight for something that they believe in and succeed. So they're the heroes, but it doesn't mean that the men in the world can't be heroes either.
Right. They're not mutually exclusive.
No.
You had said that you had worked, I'm going to switch gears and circle back to the YA, because we're a book club of primarily moms. Sometimes the things that come up in the book club is, hey, my daughter is looking for new books, or my son's looking for new books. Whether it be your first series or the series that you did with Jason, could you just tell us a little bit about those books and who they would be great for? Who should we recommend those for in the group?
Well, my first series was a lot of fun. I clawed back the rights to them, and I'm planning to reissue them with, I want to do them with like cool covers and stuff. But so that series was called Kiki Strike. It was about 6 delinquent Girl Scouts who discover an underground city beneath Manhattan. And along the way, you learn at the end of every chapter, you learn certain tricks, like how to be a master of disguise and how to pick locks and things like that. And it was a lot of fun. And I still get notes from people from time to time saying that they felt like those were their first feminist handbooks, which makes me really proud. So those are great. The Nightmares books that I wrote with Jason are really fun and sweet and cute and beautifully illustrated too. And then I have a number of YA books, one in particular that I'm very fond of, called How to Lead a Life of Crime, which is incredibly dark. Like, incredibly. I was in a dark place when I wrote it. So it's it's not for the faint of heart. But they're all fun. I mean, all of them are a good time.
Well, I was a Girl Scout growing up, so the Strike series sounds like I would probably circle back and read that now, and maybe I'll read it one day with my daughter.
Yeah, it was when I wrote it, I didn't know I was writing a book for young people. I wrote it for myself. So I wrote it when I was in my early 30s. So it was really meant to entertain me. And I just happened to be a 12-year-old on the inside. So that's who ended up getting to read it.
Well, awesome. I hope that they get reissued with new covers and that a whole new audience will get exposed to them. And, that's another good thing about this book getting the attention that it did, is that people get to circle back to things that you did previously, whether it's YA or adult. I mean, I know that this was your first adult novel, but you still get the exposure. So hopefully that's.
No, it's great. I would really love to do, something fun with the Kiki Strike books. They're entertaining for adults as well.
They sound like it. Well, I know someone else had asked the question in the chat, and then someone else had asked it in the group. Marcy wanted to know, is there any chance of a sequel, or even better, a series? She'd love more of Harriet, Nessa, Jo, and Lucy.
Yeah, so I'm working on a book right now. It's due soon, so it's not too far away from being published, but I wouldn't say it's a sequel, but it's in the same universe. So I wanted to create my own universe of witchy women, in their late 40s who go around, kicking bad guy butt. So it's set in the same town, and Harriet does kind of pass through at one point, but it centers on 2 sisters who come from a long line of women who have lived on this one patch of ground in Maddock for the last 150 years. And so it's a lot of fun. It's once again very, very strange and very witchy, but it's you get to meet a lot of very interesting women throughout the book.
Well, fantastic. It sounds like if we liked The Change, we are probably going to like this next one too.
Yeah, I would say so.
Maybe those ladies will run into Harriet or Jo or Nessa in the supermarket and grabbing some herbs. Who knows?
Yeah, well, they're definitely going to meet Harriet, but and it all comes together. There's everything. There's a system at work that will be eventually revealed. I don't know if there will be another book after the one I'm working on now, but I would love to do it. I find this place and these characters and this world really rich and very personally gratifying.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's very engaging and it was fun to read. And you had mentioned you went to college and you had to read all the things. I went to law school and I had to read all of the cases, by the next day. And so I was not reading for much fun then. So it is such a pleasure to read fun books these days. It's just makes my heart happy. So
Totally agree. Life is too short to not have
yes.
fun. Yeah.
Jess had asked, can you talk about the start of the book in the HOA fight? She loved the start, but had no idea it was going to be just a small side story as part of the larger story in the book and an example of someone out to control others.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's just sort of like these, it's, it begins with, and we all know this guy. There's one of these guys in all of our lives. Maybe they don't work for the, homeowners association, but, there's somebody who really, really, really wants to tell you what to do. And, it's just sort of these petty tyrants that you have to deal with in your day-to-day life, whether it's your boss, whether it's, somebody who's gotten some little bit of power over you and really, really wants to turn the screws. Yeah, so I started off with that, but I just thought it was a fun way to introduce this town and the kind of people who lived there, and the ways that little tyrants like this end up creeping out of the work world and taking over other aspects of our lives as well. And also the fact that, that it was run by a bunch of women who were doing all the right stuff before he got in there. Organic mulch is important. Babies need beaches.
Right. She wanted to just thank you, Kirsten, for the catharsis provided in this book. She's currently experiencing some perimenopausal rage, usually towards men, and she truly appreciated the camaraderie she felt with these characters. So,
yeah, I mean, like this is, I really feel I feel, first of all, we are the most powerful generation of women in the history of humankind. And that's not an exaggeration, it's the truth. We are financially and socially and culturally more powerful than any other group of women have ever been. And one of the great things about reaching this time in your life is that, a lot of the wisdom and the experience and all of that sort of stuff that you've been accumulating your entire life, this is the time to put it to use. And so I really hope that it does inspire people to come together and fight for what they feel is important. Because there's a lot of stuff going on right now that I think that we could really fix. And I think one of the biggest problems is that we still don't know how powerful we are. We still haven't realized it. And I hope that I hope that we wake up soon. I do believe that this generation will be the one who does it. And really start to make lives better for our daughters and nieces and the women who will be coming along next.
Yes, hopefully we can bring about some change. I don't know, in about 20 days. Just remember to get out and vote soon, everyone.
Yes, please do.
Sonia said, hi from Toronto, Canada. I'd love to see this as a film. Have the rights been purchased? And did you have any dream casting?
Yeah, so the rights have been purchased. And they're looking to make a TV show out of it. And the woman who's doing it is the woman, she used to be Reese Witherspoon's partner, and they made Big Little Lies together and The Undoing and a bunch of other big stuff. And she's done a lot of really cool projects on her own as well. And so she's looking to turn it into a show. And the reason she's fantastic, but it was also an all-woman team, which was really important to me because there isn't a lot of that in Hollywood. So yeah, let's see, cross your fingers, because I mean, getting anything made is like winning the lottery. It's like I've realized that there's just so much luck involved in it. You can't get too invested, otherwise you're going to get your heart broken. But there's a really good chance. And I just want, in terms of the casting, the only person that I really had, so there were two people. So when I was thinking of Nessa, I always imagined Yvette Nicole Brown, who played Shirley in Community. I just loved her so much. I wanted to hug her every time I saw her. And so I actually wrote the book with her in mind. And, Harriet had a lot of inspiration, but one of the people that I always saw, and she's obviously not, somebody who would take the part, but I always saw somebody like Lauren Hutton in that role, somebody with that big kind of crazy smile, who looked like she might be a little unhinged. So, and there are a number of people who could play that, like a Charlize Theron or like a Julianne Moore, so it's, that's my, I've had some names thrown at me and they all sound really good. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Well, you had mentioned Big Little Lies and The Undoing. Well, those were both HBO shows. So, I mean, if this got like a TV show on a cable network or on a Netflix or Hulu, I always expect big things. So I hope that it comes to fruition. I would love to watch it.
It would be so much fun. Whatever, even aside from me having written it, I just think it would be a lot of fun to see this sort of thing on television, because you don't, hi. You don't, I want to make work for women my age. Let's put it that way. I want to see women my age on television. I want to see them, taking care of bad guys. And yes, exactly. That's my goal. It's just, I want to make more work for us.
Have you read Killers of a Certain Age? Because
I have, yes.
That was another great book. They were in their 60s, and I was immediately just thinking about casting for that. Jamie Lee Curtis and Demi Moore.
I love Jamie Lee Curtis so much. Isn't she the best? I know, but like, so those women were all 60 and they're talking about themselves like they're ancient. I was like, what? I know some 60-year-olds who could, like, kick anybody's butt.
Right. Jess had said, you seem to be intentional about the diversity of characters, race, and sexual identity. How did you make sure to do that in a way that was sensitive and representative, especially of any identities that you don't hold?
Well, I okay, so I didn't necessarily set out to make it diverse. It's just sort of, that's my world. Like I live in Brooklyn, like, that's my, my friend group is that's who's in it. So it would have seemed strange to me to write a book about, that it was just a bunch of women who looked like me, and were, cisgendered women. So like I wanted it to feel like a group of people that I knew, and that I would, come into contact with. And I don't know, I didn't, I tried to be as respectful as I possibly could, and I had other people read it. I'm not above making mistakes. And so, so you have an opportunity to let somebody from a different background or, whatever, read your book and give you their thoughts. I always take that, because I'm not perfect. And I want to make sure, my main concern is simply this: I do not want anything getting in the way of somebody's enjoyment. I don't want anything, I don't want them stumbling over anything that strikes them as untruthful or dishonest or pandering or anything else. I want them to feel like this is a story that sounds like one that they would tell about themselves and their friends. So that was my biggest concern. And the only way to make sure that that's what's happened is just to give it to people to read. and be very, very open to criticism. And that's one of the nice things about working in advertising for as long as I did, was I have a skin like a rhino. Like you could I'm so good at taking criticism. Like it's just sort of like, you tell me what it is and I'm gonna fix it. Like I don't get, all hurt if somebody says that I've made a mistake.
Well, that's a great character trait, and one that I'm sure will serve you well and has served you well as a writer. I mean,
It saved me a lot of pain. It really has. So,
what do you hope that readers take away from the change?
I like it, exactly what I said before. I mean, it's just sort of, we have been listening to people tell us what this time of life is going to be like our entire lives. When I was 24 years old, an older woman, and she was 38, so she's ancient. she told me, she was like, someday. And it was really like, the crone cackling. She's like, ha, 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 you're going to be invisible. And I thought, no, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? I have no intention of being invisible. I don't care if people don't want to see me. I'm going to make them look. And, but as I got older, I realized that all of those things that we had been told made absolutely no sense anymore. I mean, maybe they did for our grandmother's generation, maybe, but they certainly don't apply now. And yet we're still walking around whispering words like menopause, or feeling bad about getting older or dreading, this part of your life. And my goal was to rewrite that story and to make it something that people can look forward to. It's not just a book for people my age, it's a book for women of all ages, because I want even the 20-year-olds who read it to have something to look forward to, and to know that their life isn't going to end when they hit 50. It might actually just get better. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love the little byline on the book. It's not over, it's time.
Yeah.
So like, it does speak to all different ages, the 20-year-olds that you were just saying. And I hope that it does give the positive message that you are putting out into the world. It definitely resonated with a lot of the women in the book club. And so to wrap this lovely chat up, Jess is now looking to turning 50. She's looking forward to turning 50.
Me too.
So one of our favorite questions to ask is, Kirsten, what are you reading and loving right now? Because, we love to get book recommendations, maybe something that we haven't heard about, something that's not yet published. Let us know what should we be adding to our TBR?
I just read a really fun book by Chandler Baker. She sent me an ARC for her latest book called Cutting Teeth, which was really, she went there. I'm going to tell you what it's about, because honestly, the premise of this book is so wild. It's a little bit on the horror. It's very much on the horror spectrum, but I enjoyed that. Me reading, I'm reading a book about mushrooms called Entangled Life. It's really good, but it's for my research. But I guess I would say my favorite books, I love everything Madeline Miller wrote. Circe, Song of Achilles, both unbelievably beautiful books. I love Daphne du Maurier. Rebecca is probably one of my favorite books of all time. And yes, Entangled Life, How Fungi Make Art. Yes, exactly. And if you haven't read it, I love this writer, Angela Carter. She's a British author. She died young in the early 90s. And which makes me sad, because I can only imagine what she would have gone on to do. But she wrote a number of books. One was Wise Children. There's Nights at the Circus. It's magical realism. It's just crazy stuff. You'll definitely see why I love her if you read any of those books. But this one's really good. It's called The Bloody Chamber. And I would say it's sort of like feminist fairy tales, but it's just sort of, just kind of, taking the idea of fairy tales and really turning them on their head and making you think about, you know, what you're being told in these stories that we've all, you know, read our entire lives. But this is really good. It's fun. It's not preachy at all. It's really fun. And look at that cover. Isn't that nice? So
Fantastic.
I would check that out if you can. But I like books
Awesome.
about weird women. What can I say?
I also know that you liked you like a lot of Ira Levin's books. And
Oh my God, yes,
the
he's my
Stepford
favorite.
Wives. And you just read Chandler's Cutting Teeth, but have you read Chandler's The Husbands?
I have not. No, I read The Whisper Network, but I did not read The Husbands. I should do that.
You need to check that one out because it's definitely got a Stepford Wives vibe to it. But
I love it. You know what drives me insane is like they keep remaking the Stepford Wives. And it's the exact same like 1950s kind of like whatever. It's like, no, take that and put that in the modern world. Like it still applies. You could do something really fun with it and nobody's bothered. But you know, Rosemary's Baby too. Such a classic. He was a genius. Like
yeah, he was.
Nobody knows who he is anymore. Like nobody has that name recognition, but his books have had, I think, the biggest impact on popular culture, you know, of almost any other American writer. He's really planted a lot of ideas into our heads. So yeah, I love him.
Well, fantastic. Kirsten, thank you so much for coming and chatting with the Peloton Moms Book Club. We just so loved the change. We're going to continue to champion it in the group and outside of the group. And we can't wait to see what else might pop up in the universe that you've created. And we wish you so much continued success.
Thank you guys for coming. It's nice to see you guys.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.